Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time for our Game Week 33 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid, the video where we have a look at some transfer trends and try and direct ourselves on what kind of transfers we should be making. Guys, if you do enjoy this one, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's have a look at the rules of the video. So buys are plays you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells are plays you might have but you should probably think about removing. Keeps are plays you might be thinking of removing but I think you should potentially keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now but I think they are potential traps that should be avoided. Let's have a quick look at the scores from previous game weeks. And I say previous game weeks because it wasn't actually last game week. We actually skipped a week of buy, sell, keep, avoid last week. But we are back again today. But just casting our eyes back a couple of game weeks to see how we got on for these scores. In general, the buys did pretty well other than Saka, who obviously did not start against Luton, if you remember that, guys. Sells working out pretty well other than maybe Bowen. Keeps, I think, were not so good in that particular game week. With Alisson and Trippier, I did recommend as keeps for long-term keeps rather than immediate holds, and the avoids pretty much all blanked as well. So not a bad week, but it was so long ago, guys. We need to think about game week 33 now. And game week 33, we are seeing a lot of hype around the Arsenal defense. So I'm going to put both Raya and Ben White as my two buys for this game week. The Arsenal defense, I think it may be time to double up on these guys. And I know what a lot of you may be thinking, well, Dan, I am free hitting in game week 34 anyway, and I don't really need Arsenal defenders for that double game week. Well, if I'm totally honest, guys, I look through these Arsenal defenders and how well they're doing defensively. I mean, they're doing more than doubly as well as kind of the second best defensive at the moment in terms of clean sheets. They're just so far above everyone else that I actually think I prefer Raya, Ben White, these kind of players even above some of the double game week players. I mean, think about it, guys. Chelsea defenders playing in their double game week in 35, you might be planning towards those kind of guys, but are they going to keep clean sheets? Chelsea against Aston Villa and then Spurs have Arsenal and then Chelsea. I think even in the double game week 35, we could actually see some traps there in the Chelsea and Spurs defense. Why not just stick with a defense we know is doing so well? We know they can keep a clean sheet against literally anyone, no matter how hard you think some of these fixtures are. Arsenal are just doing the business. Raya, really nice value for money at 5.1 million. He's the cheapest nailed on Arsenal defender you can go for if you count goalkeepers as defenders. And Ben White, a little bit more expensive, but he is providing a lot of bonus points at the moment, and his key passes are really an added appeal that could get you the odd assist over the coming game week. So really like these Arsenal defensive guys, would definitely recommend picking them up, whether you are free hitting in 34 or not, to be honest. Now for our attackers, I think this is a little bit more what free hitters for 34 were thinking. Foden, first of all. A difficult game against Brighton, maybe in game week 34. So if you are free hitting in 34, I think Foden is an absolute must buy for you with a double game week coming up in game week 37 for Man City. But this game against Luton, I expect after a rest in game week 32, Foden will be back in action playing every single game. I know some people are worried about Foden's game time. I do want to put it out there, I am pretty confident he does start, because what we often see is that when Pep Guardiola kind of maybe rests one of his big players, that's usually a good sign that they're going to go on and play a lot of games in succession. Particularly a player like Foden, where there's been no injury issues whatsoever this season. He has been their star man, really, this season. And he's been pretty much nailed on every single game week throughout this entire season. So I would not let that one benching put you off too much. I think going forward, he is going to be a superstar. And against Luton Town, this is going to be a huge opportunity to get some serious FPL points, just like he did against Aston Villa not so long ago. So Phil Foden, very much a big buy, even after that Brighton game, which you can definitely afford to play him in that fixture. We've got the likes of Forest and Wolves there as well, so I really like this run for Foden. To be honest, again, whether you are free hitting or not, you've got to play what's in front of you, and Luton is a great fixture for Foden. And Isak is my other buy here. Again, another player with no double in 34, but does double in 37, and I like the look of these fixtures for him as well. Spurs at home first of all, followed by Palace, Sheffield United and Burnley. Then obviously we're going to have a double game week in 37 after that. So as long as Isak can continue to be fit, these underlying numbers and the goals he's scoring at the moment, yes, there's been a couple of penalties in there, but even outside of the penalties, he's looked super effective. Really a dangerous player, and I think he is going to have more goals to come over the coming game weeks. Great stats. Again, if you are free hitting in 34, that will maybe drive you towards Isak a little bit more. If you are looking to maybe dead end into game week 35 and wildcard in 35, you may want to avoid Isak and maybe go towards a Darwin or a Solanke instead. But But certainly, if you don't plan on wildcarding anytime soon, whether you're free hitting or not, in Game Week 34, Isak is going to be a monster player between now and the end of the season. Really, really like this pick. Martinez is a sell, a good time to sell him ahead of this Arsenal away fixture. Really, really difficult one there for Aston Villa, especially when you consider how poor defensively Aston Villa have been. And they really, really have been very, very poor indeed. I think they've actually kind of sunk right to the bottom of the table of expected goals conceded among all Premier League teams over the past 6 or 7 game weeks. So Aston Villa kind of rock bottom there, maybe second bottom alongside the likes of Manchester United. And that's due to the fact that they have lost a lot of defensive players, and now they've also lost Douglas Luiz as well, who is going to be suspended. He is obviously a huge player for Aston Villa, arguably their best player, a real key player in the kind of defensive areas as well. So I think Martinez is going to be in big trouble against Arsenal, and even after that, you know, I'm not expecting Aston Villa defense to be too good value for money, just because there's no double game weeks there. 5.3 million is a lot for a goalkeeper. Might be a good week to make a little bit of a swap on your goalkeeper. Martinez to Raya seems really, really obvious this week. Also, would look to sell Kyle Walker. He is still not back to fitness. We were expecting him back around game week 33, but it just does not look like it's going to happen. And with so much rotation in the Man City defense, I think it might even be a good idea to avoid the Man City defense entirely. I think maybe Diaz is maybe the one player I would consider from the defense outside of the goalkeeper, which we'll talk about very, very briefly soon. But yeah, Walker, I think he's got to go because of that injury. Doesn't look like he's going to return quite yet, and I'm not sure when he is actually going to be back either. Doesn't seem worth holding on to with some great defensive options elsewhere. Jarrod Bowen, another easy sell. So many great midfielder options to go for at the moment with the likes of Son, Saka. We've got to talk about Foden, De Bruyne, a lot of people are talking about at the moment. Mo Salah, obviously, Luis Diaz, Ødegaard, Havertz from Arsenal. Eze is going to be coming into our thoughts very, very soon as well. There isn't a place for Bowen anymore at 7.9 million, unfortunately. And even though he has done okay over the past few game weeks, he's done fine. I think the fact that he might have a minor injury as well might be enough to tip us in towards just selling him, getting rid of him. Still a very highly owned player, and I think he would be one of the first players I'd look to replace this game. We can improve my midfield a little bit there. And Morris as well, Carlton Morris facing Man City away at this game week. Not a very good fixture, of course. I think Morris has been an okay player to hold on to if you've had him for a little while now, particularly for game week 28, 29. I know some people still have him from then, but it might be the time finally to replace him with another forward. And at 5 million, there's possibly a couple of options. Muniz is still there as a potential option. We've got Chris Wood as well in great form. So there are other options in the cheap kind of 5 million areas for attackers. Mateta as well with a double game week next week. He's definitely worth considering. But yeah, Morris is a guy I would look to be replacing right now. Ederson, I think, is worth keeping, I think, actually. Yeah, so he was back on the bench last game week, so I think he should, in theory, get his place back in the Man City starting 11 reasonably soon, you would have thought. I think Man City fans will probably agree with me that Ederson is going to be back and the main goalkeeper for the remainder of the season. The fixtures are excellent for the defensive assets for Man City, but it's so hard to find that nailed on man, and Ederson could potentially be that guy to take you through these great fixtures all the way to game week 37. Well, we will have that double for Man City as well. So if I'm going in on the Man City defense right now, like I said, Ruben Diaz is a player I'd potentially go for. Ederson is the other player I think about as well. If you have him in your team already, I would probably keep him at this point. Whether or not he's a buy is maybe a slightly different question. I'm not sure he's necessarily a buy until we get clearance on whether he's going to be starting regularly or not. But if you already got him, you've got a great asset there. I don't think he's worth selling. Keep him around, see what happens. You could get very, very lucky here. And Van Dijk, a few people are actually looking to sell Van Dijk at the moment. I wonder if it is because of his high price tag of 6.6 million. But I look around the Liverpool defence right now, particularly when we're targeting this great fixture at home against Palace and then the double game week, which again looks great for defensive assets as well against Fulham and Everton. Who are you going to go for Liverpool right now? Well, Kelleher, Alisson, we're not sure what the situation is going to be like there by the time we get to the double game week. Trent and Bradley, who's going to be starting? Robertson, Gomez, you know, And who's the second centre-back who is going to be partnering Van Dijk? Is it going to be Konate? Is Kwanzaa going to get some game time? Liverpool's defence right now is an absolute disaster other than this man. So if you are fortunate enough to already have Van Dijk in your team, I would definitely look to keep him. I would expect to see a couple of clean sheets over the next 2 game weeks. When you include that double next week as well, I think that's going to be really, really nice for Van Dijk owners. No way I'd be selling him if I had him already. Now, Son is one of the highest sold players at time of recording. I appreciate he's only got 1 assist, and that's the only goal contribution he's got over the last 2 game weeks. But this is Son, guys. Like, come on. Newcastle is the next fixture, which is obviously very, very nice indeed. Over the past 5 game weeks, the attacking numbers are decent. They are very, very decent, and he is getting attacking returns as well. Clinical, on penalties, lots of things you love. And this fixture against Newcastle, who may be improving slightly defensively, but there's still a defense you'd want to target with some of your premium attacking assets. Son could do some serious damage here, so to see so many people selling Son comes as a bit of a surprise to me. I know so many people want a Foden or a De Bruyne or a Salah, but is it really worth it this game week when Son is about to play Newcastle? I'm just not convinced it is. I would look to keep the South Korean in my FPL team if I had him already, which I don't, and I'm terrified about that. Solanke is our other keep. A few people selling him as well. Disappointing results for him recently, but this Manchester United fixture, as we mentioned before, is really, really good at the moment. They are just so poor defensively, conceding so many chances, and although Solanke struggled to get into the game a little bit against Luton, I think going up against Manchester United, it could be a very different story, with this team conceding just so many chances, so many chances, and Solanke is going to have the opportunity, at least, to do some damage. Penalty taker as well against a team that very recently conceded 2 penalties to Chelsea. I think everything is lining up quite nicely for Solanke for this game week, and even though I wouldn't necessarily be desperate to buy him this game week, if I already had him, there's no way I would be letting him go ahead of this great Manchester United fixture, followed by that crucial double game week that we are all targeting right now. On to the avoids, and things are going to get a little bit controversial here. First of all, Kelleher. I would not recommend buying Kelleher right now, and I say that as someone who already owns Kelleher. I am very concerned that he is not going to be the starting Liverpool goalkeeper by the time we get to game week 34. So if you are buying Kelleher, you've probably only got this game week to look forward to with Crystal Palace, because Alisson expected back in training this week and looking at a return the following week, which is game week 34, and that's where you are targeting your Liverpool players for, really. You want them for game week 34, and I don't think Kelleher provides that for you. Now, of course, this avoid, I guess, is going to be the type of avoid that probably makes me look pretty foolish when we have to review this game week in game week 34's video, but because I am kind of expecting a clean sheet from Kelleher this week, but he's a player where if you don't have him already, he is going to cost you 2 transfers to get him, because you've got to use 1 transfer to bring him in, and then you're going to need another transfer to remove him again in game week 34. Now, there is obviously a chance that Kelleher may play maybe just the first game. He might even technically play 2 games in 34, but it doesn't even seem remotely worth taking that risk at this moment. Wait for more information, and then we can maybe talk about Kelleher again next week if it looks like Alisson is going to be unavailable. But right now, I would not be wanting to place a bet on that one. It seems unlikely. Pedro Porro is also going to be an avoid. Obviously, a huge score in game week 32, which has diverted a lot of people's attention towards him. But even if you are free hitting in 34 and you can avoid that blank that Spurs have, this Newcastle away fixture is no good for a defender. And we've seen time and time again, well, actually again against Nottingham Forest, that Spurs just concede goals every single game. And maybe the occasional attacking contribution from Pedro Porro may be able to bail you out, but at 5.9 million, his attacking numbers just are not good enough for me to want to invest this much money in a player who is pretty much allergic to clean sheets, because that's what Spurs are at the moment. So not a player I'd be looking to buy with this Newcastle away fixture, followed by a blank. Clean sheets looking very unlikely over the next, well, 1 game week, I suppose. After that, we can maybe talk about Pedro Porro again when we get to that double game week 35. But as I mentioned earlier, that double game week doesn't look great. The following fixture is against Liverpool. Would I really be wanting to invest in a subpar Spurs defense with these fixtures on the board? If there was no double game week there, we might not be talking about Pedro Porro, but I guess we have to talk about him a little bit. I just don't think clean sheets are coming anytime soon for this guy. Sadly, going to be an avoid this week. And okay, I think we have potentially peaked on how controversial this video series can be. Let me know what you think about this one, guys, but we are putting the first and the third most popular transfers in at time of recording, both in the avoid section this game week. Let's go through De Bruyne first of all, and if I'm totally honest with you guys, I don't think he's starting. I don't think De Bruyne is going to start against Luton this game week. Now, maybe we get some early team news, and if we do, I would be more than willing to change my mind on De Bruyne. But when we look at, you know, last game week, obviously, De Bruyne playing the game there. He's going to be playing in the Champions League tonight. Then we've got Luton Town. And then a couple of days after, we're going to have more Champions League. We're going to have Brighton. We're going to have FA Cup games. They're all kind of in the same kind of area. I think the FA Cup game is actually before the Brighton fixture, but still, it's going to be very, very difficult, actually, for De Bruyne to pick up points if he's not playing. And I look at this fixture against Luton at home, and this seems like the perfect game to rest De Bruyne. Now, De Bruyne is not the same as Foden. De Bruyne is someone who needs to be looked after a little bit more because of his injury record, because of his fairly recent injuries and troubles with his kind of muscles, I guess. And obviously, he can't play 90 minutes every single game at the moment, and if he has to be rested when Man City are still competing on all fronts, more double game weeks to come, FA Cup, Champions League, it's going to be difficult, and the Luton Town fixture seems the perfect fixture to rest him in. I can see it coming already. I can see more disappointment, just like people who brought in Foden last game week were disappointed last game week. I think we might see the same with De Bruyne buyers this game week. Very often is the case that a player who has just been rested is the guy to go for the following week for Man City, and the guy who's just played is actually the player to avoid. And I think we might see that a couple of times between now and the end of the season with some of the bigger Man City assets. So De Bruyne, I could talk about the fact that he scored 2 goals from 0.09 XG, or the fact that he's maybe overperforming his assists a little bit, but the key thing here really is that even in a great fixture, it is no good if the player is unlikely to start, and I don't believe De Bruyne is likely to start. But willing to change on my mind on this one. Let's see how we go a little bit closer to the deadline if we get some team leagues. But if we don't get team leagues, I think you just have to assume that De Bruyne is not going to start. Let me know what you think about that one, guys. Do you think De Bruyne is going to start against Luton or not? I personally think it's unlikely. And Ollie Watkins, well, an away fixture against Arsenal is not just the toughest fixture an attacker can face this season, but Arsenal's defence numbers are so good that they are better than kind of any teams over the past several years. This is quite literally the most difficult fixture an attacker can face in years. And Ollie Watkins, despite the fact he is the top scoring player in FPL and has proven time and time again he is very effective, we have to acknowledge at this point that Arsenal are just keeping clean sheets like it's nothing against anyone. And I don't think Aston Villa are necessarily top of the pile like a Liverpool or a Man City, but they are a decent team. But without Douglas Luiz, is that going to impact things? I just not sure if I can see Ollie Watkins getting a goal in this game. And even if he does, you know, that's going to be it. We're going to be looking at 1 goal for him, probably no bonus points with Arsenal scoring goals at the other end of the pitch as well. Is it worth it when we have such a tough fixture now? No double game week next week either for Watkins. It just doesn't seem like the time to buy him, which again, I know is controversial. He's just scored 2 goals, but it's a very, very different proposition. Brentford, you know, and then Arsenal, completely different ends of the spectrum in terms of the quality of the defence he's facing. So do not expect another Watkins haul. I think it is definitely always possible. Everything's possible in football, but I think you are probably better going elsewhere. I think a player like Isak, for example, got just as much, probably better chance of getting goals this game week than Ollie Watkins. Also has a double game week later on in the season and is cheaper as well. So Isak, you know, for example, I would pick him immediately over Watkins. If you're looking for a double game week player next game week, you know, Slanky, Darwin, these are the kind of players I'd be looking at going for. I think all of these kind of players probably outscore Watkins over the next 2 game weeks. Well, definitely the next 1 game week, because this Arsenal game is just too tough. It's just the opposite time of the time to buy an attacker. Wait till this game week passes. Then you're probably going to be looking at double game week players. Anyway, after that, you're probably again going to be looking at Spurs and Chelsea. After that, even more double game week teams that don't include Aston Villa. I'm just wondering where Ollie Watkins fits in all of this, to be perfectly honest. So there we go, guys. Let me know what you think about the buy, sell, keeps, and avoids this video. I think in general, we probably want to wait till early team news for Man City. We'll try and deliver that to you guys on the deadline stream as always. And if we can get something solid about De Bruyne, then maybe he comes back into the thoughts a little bit. I worry about De Bruyne. People picking him up. Who are they sacrificing? Son, nailed on. Great fixture against a Newcastle team. Is it you could sacrifice Saka or Salah? I don't know. I really don't see a place for De Bruyne in FPL teams right now, unless we know he's going to start, and even then it still seems like a risk looking at what you might be sacrificing. But there we go, guys. Let me know what you think about the buy, sell, keeps, and avoids this week. Discussion welcome, particularly when we're on the little bit of the controversial side in terms of our selections. But thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this video, at least, whether you agreed or not, make sure you do drop a like, subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get the discussion going in the comment section. Check out another Game Week 33 video if you would like to. We've got plenty on the channel, as always, uploads every single day. But until I see you on tomorrow's 100 Experts video, I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.